Welcome to another episode of the One Life Podcast World Series edition.
The Fall Classic.
It is also Halloween tonight.
It's a big deal.
Yeah, which in Bible college, it was called Reformation Day. So
For sure.
we could not. Could you celebrate Halloween as a kid?
Could.
Okay.
It's kind of weird. Our family, my brother and I, we weren't allowed to watch the Smurfs and have trolls because they were of the devil.
Okay.
But we could go trick-or-treating.
All right.
go
That's
think
funny.
of that. But it was always like you have
Yeah.
to have like, you know, and we had the same rule with our kids. Like, we're going to go trick-or-treating and we're going to be out there in our neighborhood tonight and meeting neighbors and having fun. But like no demonic, crazy costumes and blood and gore. We try to stay away from,
that's fair.
from all of that.
That's a fair point. Yeah, I could not go trick-or-treating as a kid.
Okay.
I did try to steal my friend's candy the next day at lunch because they brought all their candy, but yeah.
So I think it was Jimmy Kimmel. I could be wrong on that, but he has a great bit of if you have young kids, take them trick or treating, and then the next morning they come back downstairs and you video them and you say, "Mom and Dad, last night after you went to bed, we ate all of your candy." Watching their reaction.
Oh my
So
gosh.
Amanda and I did that one time,
Oh,
and like
no.
we hid their pillowcases from them. We put it somewhere, and our kids lost their minds.
That's crazy.
We don't have it videoed. I wish we would have, but it's just an idea of like,
That's so mean.
Yeah, it's terrible.
What was the reaction when you actually gave them the candy, or did you give them candy?
Oh, thank you. It was that moment of just instant relief.
Yeah, that's funny.
Yeah.
Well, we don't. Regardless of what happens with the World Series,
Yeah.
I think you're repping the Diamondbacks. I just want to say I do love the Diamondbacks. When I moved to Arizona, I took them on, but growing up in the
one of,
Dallas
like-
area,
That's
Texas
fair.
has my heart.
That's a good hometown team. I get it. Like one of the rules of like church planting and pastoring is wherever you're called to, whatever city, is you have to adopt those sports teams as well. So
Yeah.
I want the record to show everybody that
You love your
that Pastor Jared loves Arizona more than Pastor East Campus. Pastor DJ's not all bought into that.
Yeah, I did pray last Sunday though for the Well, 2 Sundays I guess.
Okay.
To beat the Phillies, they were down 3-2.
And
A
look
couple
at-
people were
look at
like,
what
"I hope
happened."
this works," and
Yeah.
my prayers obviously worked.
Man.
But I was rooting for them to win the pennant.
Wow.
2011, my heart got ripped out basically when Texas was two times. We were 1 strike away from winning the World
Well,
Series.
I just forgot about this, but somebody on our staff just said, "Hey, Texas needs a win. The Cowboys have been so bad for so long.
Jeez, that's true.
Like even whoever wins, like good for Dallas, right?
fair.
They need a
That's
win.
true.
Pick
We
me
do.
up.
That's true. All right, so obviously we're kind of talking a little bit about culture today.
Yeah.
We're talking about in the sermon you talked about basically love requires sacrifice. You hit on something regarding sports and kind of culture and some of those things that we sacrifice to things we're passionate about. We sacrifice our schedule and our time to take kids all over the place to go to this sporting event or this drama or this performance, this recital, whatever. And so as we transition into the sermon a little bit, like talk about the idea of sacrifice, what our American culture is as far as we sacrifice things. We may not even realize we're sacrificing things, but it's kind of like where we spend our time. That's really where our heart is at. So talk about that concept from a cultural standpoint, and then let's talk through the sermon as far as like what is God asking us to sacrifice to expand the kingdom?
Well, most people, I would say it this way: nobody uses the word sacrifice. They don't even think that they're sacrificing.
Yeah.
But to your point, show me your schedule, show me your checkbook, and I will show you where your heart is.
Yeah.
That's an old, I think, Dave Ramsey, maybe John Maxwell quote. Show me your checkbook, I'll show you your heart. So of course we're sacrificing. Like, I mean, and it is just true. In 2023, what is every family sacrifice? Their kids.
Yeah.
We're gonna put their needs first because we're gonna live vicariously through them because they're gonna make it to the NFL.
Hudson will.
No, they're not.
But Hudson will.
They're not. They're not getting a scholarship. They're not. Like, I mean,
Yeah.
I hope they do.
Yeah.
But
No, I'm
the
with you.
reality is 99% of your kids
Yeah.
don't.
Right.
But we sacrifice like they're going to, and we put all this time and effort into it. And that was the point, right? I was just saying, like, you sacrifice way more than you think you do.
Right, yeah.
If you want to go on that dream vacation, you have no problem for a season, tightening the belt, saving money. We want to take our kids to Disneyland. That's a sacrifice.
Right.
You're temporary pain, right, for something greater. We're all sacrificing. And then the issue of the church and the giving is love requires sacrifice. Like, I don't know other way to say that. Like,
Yeah.
even like dating Amanda,
Right.
when you love something or somebody, you're willing to sacrifice your needs for their needs and for the betterment of the relationship. And so that was a call to action for our church. Is in the One Life movement, we're all called to sacrifice. And would you be willing to sacrifice to see a life redeemed, to see a soul saved, a marriage put back together,
Yeah.
families, that are separated. Are we willing to sacrifice to see those things happen?
You hit on two things basically of why we should sacrifice, right? So the first one was basically like prevention beats intervention. We're talking about that. And then for a greater joy. This is why we do what we do, even as a church, but then breaking it down to the individual standpoint. So talk a little bit about like, what is prevention giving versus intervention giving? How do those differ? What does that look like? And just dive deeper into that.
So I'm always trying, and I've been the pastor here for 6 years. I'm always trying to think of new ways to say things. Of prevention giving is just consistent week after week, month after month, like percentage giving, tithing. Like we just in advance have made the decision, like this is who we are. It just automatically comes out of our account. Like we are givers to the local church. That's preventative giving. So we can have buildings, we can turn the lights on, we can hire staff. All those hundreds and hundreds of people here at One Life Church are preventative givers, if that makes sense. They're just faithful givers week after week, making sure the ministry takes place. And when you budget the way that we do, like the 10-10-80, it allows us to forward think. It allows us to, we don't live week to week or paycheck to paycheck, right, as a revenue of a church. It allows us to plan for the future and even have more margin, right, which is awesome. So that's like preventative giving. Intervention giving is like, oh my goodness, there's a war happening in Israel and we have a local church partner there that is an immediate need. If you feel called to do it, and that's what people, and they're tugged by that, right? They see the pictures in the news, they're giving to that. And I think that's good. I don't think that's a bad thing. But 2 Corinthians chapter 9 tells us, no, the best giving is when you decide in advance that you're not under compulsion, you're not reluctant, like you just have decided it's just a part of who you are, you're just a generous person, and that's in advance. Preventative giving is what we've talked about today. That's the balance. I think both are good, both are important, and we do that from time to time here at One Life. Of like, hey, there's a huge need, Hawaii Relief Fund. We have people in our church that are being affected by that. If God speaks to you about giving, would you give?
Yeah.
I think that's an important part of ministry and generosity. But the better for ministry in a church, longevity, is hundreds and hundreds of more people making a commitment just to be a generous person.
Yeah. You were talking a little bit about the church history in the sermon. Like this church has been around here since really, I think, 1963. So from that standpoint, as you hit on preventative giving, knowing the history of the church, where it was at, even when you just stepped foot and kind of felt out, like where are we actually at? I think about all the people, like you mentioned, that had gone before us that are giving.
Absolutely.
They honestly, like preventative giving, they prevented the doors from being closed.
That's
right? Like them giving and sacrificing, even like you alluded to last week, when there may not have been much vision at that time, they knew, hey, God's going to send somebody. This church will reach hundreds, thousands of more people. So I just thought like that in my head too, like we're preventing this area from not just being without the gospel. Like
having a gospel presence in Central Mesa. A friend of mine, right when I took the job here, he said something I'll never forget. I've forgotten it. He said, "Hey, every time you drive onto that campus, you should turn your heart to gratitude that there were people before you that gave and sacrificed for this. And even though it wasn't updated and remodeled, right, and we had lots of deferred maintenance, there were families. I don't even know if many people know this, but at the beginning, there were families who put out second mortgages on their home to leverage their resources to buy land, to build the first building here. And as the lead pastor, who is the steward, right, of the ministry here right now, not a day goes by where I'm not grateful for people who went before us, and we're standing on their shoulders today because of their faithfulness. And I want the same to be said, right, about people 60 years from now, that there was a group of people who sacrificed for the East Campus, right, and for Superior. How cool is that?
Yeah. I think it's easy to, like, culturally, it's almost more popular, like and there's nothing wrong with the intervention giving, but like when that seems like even from a secular mindset, like this is more attractive, right? Like growing up in the Bible Belt, hurricanes every fall, right? So SEC Network you turn on now, it's like, okay, what town got hit with the hurricane? Let's give towards hurricane relief. There's nothing wrong with that,
Yeah.
but even from a secular mindset, and that is easier to quantify, as you mentioned in the sermon, like where preventative giving too is like we're going before, knowing that the gospel has to spread this way.
Right.
So I just think it's the first time I've heard it explained that way. So I wanted to kind of expound on that a little bit. I think that was really good.
And that is true, right? And I think that you can see results at One Life Church. That's why we do celebrate numbers, like 400 people give their life to Jesus, all these people baptized. But there's so many things that we just don't know of how many marriages were saved that we're never going to have the story, right? They just were faithful here, but the ministry had to be here for kids to be saved and all those types of things. I mean, that's the fun stuff. I think when you get to heaven, right, that you're going to, because of the faithfulness and the longevity of ministry right here at One Life Church, I mean, thousands and thousands of people, family members, kids have been impacted by the ministry here.
Yeah.
And we'll never know their story this side of heaven.
Yeah. I think when we're at GPA, sometimes with our teachers
GPA
and all
means
that,
what?
Gateway Polytech Academy,
The university folks, they don't know the
East
lingo
Campus,
over there.
You're right. So like we'll hang out with the teachers, and I'll give a spiel probably once a year about hey, this is who One Life Church is, and I always say hey, this church has been around since the '60s, and there's a in the what? Well, not in the school since the '60s. Let me reiterate. But yeah, and again, it's because of the giving, the generosity. All right, so the second point on there for a greater joy, our last pillar of our pathway is to go make a difference. Right. We talk about giving, we talk about serving. Ultimately, it's a greater joy, but it's the fulfillment we find in what God is calling us to do. Can you elaborate on that a little bit? Not only the ministry side, but then also from a personal side, this is why we do it.
Yeah. So the greatest needs that we have is to live a transcendent life. We are not called, and I loved Larry's story. We're going to show that in a minute. No matter how old you are, we are not called just to watch TV and play golf. Yeah. And nothing wrong with those things. Yeah. But if that's all you do, you are missing out on God's best for your life. That's
true.
We are called to live a life that impacts other people. It doesn't matter how old you are, how young, all of us have that call, which is to make an eternal difference in the life of people. So my job as the pastor is how do we get everybody on that mission? Yeah. Because I know that together, if we all have that mindset, we can go accomplish a lot. Yeah. And then to break it down and give people, and that was hopefully last week's sermon, is to get a clear vision for your personal life, to go make a difference right where you are. Yeah, that is the One Life movement. Right. At the end of the day,
it's why we exist. That's right. And it's God called us to do it. We're gonna do it. We're gonna respond to the calling He has for us.
So let me say it this way. Yeah. When I throw out big numbers like we did this weekend of we're $1,040,000 away from our goal, what we believe God's calling us to do. We have 9 weeks to close that gap. I know that spins a lot of people, right? How are we going to be able to do that? No, it's not equal amount. Yeah. It's equal sacrifice. So what is God telling you to do? Yeah. And whatever God tells you to do, if it's $10, if it's $100, if it's 1,000, 100,000, whatever God tells you to do, just do it. Yeah. And when we all stack hands on that, we all just decide in our heart we're going to make a difference for a greater joy, not live my life for the here and the now, but live it for eternity. Yeah. That's when we close that gap and are able to move the needle.
I think it's so good. I grew up hearing why we're supposed to give all the time, right? In a pastor's home. And not only that, but the way we lived as a pastor's kid was people had to give to support my dad so we could have food, right?
My kids are very familiar with that too. Right.
So, but it wasn't until I felt like God really prompted me and Juliet 2 years ago. We had sold our house in Florida, moved out here. We had a lump sum of money from that sale and we already knew we need every penny because we're going to Arizona and houses are more expensive here. And it was honestly a moment of okay, God's asking us to give. Yep. We came to the same amount at different times. I was nervous to tell her what the amount was. She was nervous to tell me. It ended up being the same amount. And we both were we cannot get a house if we do this. And I was I felt like God told me you can't get a house if you don't. I'm asking you to do this and just watch what I'll do with it. So we decided to do it. Literally a couple weeks later, this house had been on the market.
Into my office and tears in your eyes and saying, "Man, I think this is what God's calling Juliet and I didn't. And,
Yeah.
I think you said, and I'm scared to death.
Yeah. I was like, I don't know how this is
Yeah.
going to work. We might be, and we literally had to come to like, okay, maybe we're going to be in an apartment like forever.
Right.
Like, I don't know, like until, and so it honestly, and then this house came on the market that apparently had been there for like 60 days. They lost a ton of money on it. And even Pam, who's at our East Campus, was like, this doesn't really make sense. Maybe there's issues here. And we're like, it doesn't make sense either. But God was like, no, this was the plan.
All along.
And so I think I like to share that story because that was really the first time in my life where I was like, it was really tested. I'd heard it my whole life.
Yep.
And then when I had to actually like participate and sacrifice, and the greater joy, not just because we got a house and I'm like, oh, finally, God bless us. It was the joy of like, I responded to what he was calling me to do.
Yeah.
And the fulfillment I have for that is even much greater than just the house that I get to have, right? And so I think that's such a powerful moment in my family.
Yeah.
I wanted to share that.
That's awesome. I love it.
So as we transition into Larry's story, but before we do that, talk a little bit about what's coming up this Sunday, month in November.
Come on.
Want our listeners to know at the movies. Here we go.
At the movies, man, it's the most anticipated. More people attend this series than ever before. So online, hate to tell people on YouTube and Facebook, we can't stream it, but so we got to be in the room.
Yeah.
So just find the nearest campus, East Campus, University Campus, be there. And you don't want to miss like just the experience of the popcorn, the soda, the movie characters walking around taking photos with your kids. It's just,
it's going to be a blast.
It's a blast, but ultimately it is the very best weekend to invite someone you know that's far from Jesus to come. And all 4 of these messages, the gospel is clearly preached, and they will have a chance to respond. And you take the invite cards. They're somewhere around here. Take the invite cards. You never know what God will do through an invitation.
Right.
God could use you to make an eternal difference and impact on somebody else, which is, again, what the One Life movement is all about. So let's go. It's going to be and Saturday night. We're starting Saturday night like
service.
4 days away.
Yeah. A lot of cool stuff planned, not only throughout at the movies. Obviously, every week's going to be a little bit different, both campuses. We have the tailgate party at the end of At the Movies. You'll hear more about that as we
Because the last movie, I guess it's a football movie. We're not going to tell what football movie it is, but we're going to say that whole weekend, wear your favorite team's jersey. Football jersey, and you can't wear your Dallas Cowboys.
I already told the East Campus I was. I got a lot of booze this last Sunday.
Football jersey, and then Saturday night we'll have a tailgate party after, and
it's going to be fun.
It'll be a lot of fun.
It's going to be a blast. All right. Well, remember, the church is not a building we sit in. It's a movement we get to be a part of to go reach one more life for Jesus.
Let's go.
Just like Larry.
My name is Larry Mattix, and this is my one life story. I came to Arizona almost half a century ago to take a job in teaching in Superior, Arizona. I'd never been there. I didn't know what it looked like. I was offered a contract to teach chemistry and physics and math and coach football and basketball and track. So I took the job sight unseen. I loaded up my wife, Connie, and we came to Superior, Arizona. I taught there for 11 years. And in that time, we attended a church in Superior, met some lifelong friends. But as time went on, the town was slowly going down because of lack of employment. And so we ended up moving to Mesa, Arizona in 1982. And we started our first time at One Life Church. All of that time in church that we enjoyed so much, it was about us, and it was about our family, and it was about what we enjoyed and what we did. But then after many years of serving here and enjoying this church, my life changed. In 2016, I was diagnosed with cancer and was in the hospital for 90 days. And God used this church and the prayers of this church to get me through many difficult times. About halfway through my struggle at the hospital, I can remember one morning where I told Connie that I couldn't do this. This was more than I could do. And God at that time said, "It is more than you can do, but I can do it through you. He can take care of me." And from that point on, I knew that God had a plan for the rest of my life, and that every day that He gave me, I wanted to dedicate to making a difference in other people's lives. Connie was then diagnosed with cancer also, and so she was given 2 months to live. But the people at One Life prayed steadily for us. The pastor prayed over her, and she was given 2 more years of beautiful life, and we spent them together with our family. What gets me excited now in my life is the fact that we as a church have a chance to go back into Superior, in that town that has struggled to keep churches open, struggled to keep a place for people to worship and reconnect with the very church and the very building where I raised my kids, where I still have connection with 18 different individuals that I was teaching back in 1970s, that they're no longer teenagers playing football in my chemistry class, but they're 61, 62-year-old men that have the same kind of problems that all of us face. And now we at One Life have a chance to come full circle in my life and go back to where I started this journey 50 years ago. And it will be a place where God is honored and God is lifted up again. I can no longer get up and do the things that I used to be able to do, but I can pray. Life's not over when you're single and you're by yourself. You can be a part of people's lives if you just make yourself available. And I have nothing but time right now. This season of my life is probably more vibrant and powerful than any time in my whole walk. My challenge to those people that are facing changes in life, that they would just realize that God's not through with you just because you're old, just because you may have a bad leg, you may be alone, but God still has a plan and a purpose for your life. I'm Larry Mattix, and that's been my One Life story.